We'll just move on to then taking, as I said, we're a marketing business at heart. That's where Andrew and Doug began all of this. So just looking at some of the sort of techniques that we employ and are employed across sort of other businesses as well. I think we've mentioned it in a couple of certainly roundtables. The consumer nowadays has completely changed the way that they expect information to be provided to them, and that has fundamentally changed the game of the recruiter. Because if you think that someone who spends 99% of their life being a consumer doesn't bring that mindset to the game when they're being a candidate for 2 months of their life, then I think we've probably misinterpreted how the human brain kind of works and adapts. So candidates and consumers now, they expect speed, they expect choice, and ultimately they expect control. They really want to be kind of in charge of the messages that are coming to them, and they want to feel that those messages are in some way adapted to their expectations. This is why all of these brands, and Andrew mentioned others earlier, they all tap into that kind of speed and control and choice, and by delivering precisely on those 3 elements, they've become huge brands almost overnight, it seems, but it's because they're focusing on what the consumer wants. So between you all, there's about 70,000 hires a year that you guys in this room are responsible for, or the businesses that you work with certainly are. And there's about 5,000 live roles right now, which again, 1 month out of 12, 70,000 feels about right. So I think this is why kind of making sure that you're able to kind of do things that are efficient and repeatable and scalable is so important, because if you're doing it at this scale, you've just got to make sure you're doing all the right things and not getting stuck. In the marketing world, there is a kind of concept of the funnel. There's various iterations of it, but this is a fairly standard version of it, where they start off trying to create awareness and then build you through a number of different stages as a consumer: interest, consideration, right the way through to ultimately purchase. So if you, like me, receive emails on a fairly regular basis about that pair of shoes that you looked at 3 weeks ago when you got in from a night out, and they're starting to kind of suggest there's a sale today, or there's a little bit off, or there's something special going on at an event somewhere, this is all, marketing people trying to play with your head and trying to move you through to the next stage of the funnel to get you closer and closer to ultimately doing what they need you to do, which is to buy that pair of shoes. It's all structured, and none of it is just kind of guesswork and surprise. They are working you through a funnel very, very clearly. And I think, without being quite as manipulative as perhaps the marketing industry's moved to, within recruitment there are already 6 corresponding stages in the recruitment funnel that are just almost the exact equivalent of the marketing funnel. And beyond that, I think you even know the staging posts almost that you would be able to check in on with people as they work through your process. You know how many applications you've got, how many people get to shortlist, how many you move to offer. So you can already start to structure your funnel just like a marketeer would, and think about how many people do I need at the top in order to get the sales that I need at the bottom. So I think understanding how your funnel works is obviously key. The second thing I think is to be able to make sure that you're comfortable to to measure your funnel. So to take an example that's really more about the simple maths than any particular role you might hire. If you know that you want to get 5 hires and you've got £500 to try and get to those hires, so you need that to be £100 each, you can work back through the different steps that you're going to take your candidates through. And we would say, because we work in clicks, that we might work out to be 1,000 clicks. But if you know you would need about 100 applications or about 25 people coming through your shortlist process to end up getting 5 hires, then it's pretty easy to work out what spend you've got at your disposal to get you through each of those stages. And the thing that a marketeer would do in terms of measuring their funnel, they would work out, okay, which of these measure points are we hitting? So where are we getting the success that we need, and where are we failing to get the right number of consumers through? And therefore, what's the blockage? How do we solve it? How do we maybe start putting out different marketing messages? How do we put out a different price? How do we do it at a different time of the day? There's something in between those 2 stages that needs fixing for us to get people clearly through to the sale. And I think there are definitely learnings that can be applied into the recruitment process. If you understand your applications, how many people you need at shortlist, you can start to manage this. Joe earlier mentioned time to hire. So again, you can do pretty much the same thing. If time to hire is your key KPI and you know that you need 30 days to get 5 people to accept, you can work it back up and say, right, we need 100 applications in 10 days. We need that shortlist done in 15 days in order to give us any chance at all of achieving our ultimate goal. And again, if you're getting the first 2 and you're getting that 25 shortlisted people through in 15 days, but you're not getting the acceptances, then again, it feels like there's a blockage somewhere there that might need some sort of solution to be applied to it. That might be more resource, more human resource. I'd say nowadays it's probably unlikely. It's much more likely to be some sort of scalable or tech solution that you can implement there. But it helps you to spot where the blockages are and where you might need to focus your attention, because as we've said a number of times today, there's a million and one things that need doing, and just trying to understand what could do with your attention now is probably an important thing for you to be able to keep handles on. A simple one yesterday, we were trying to work out how do you show lots of applications coming through a funnel in a fun, engaging and exciting way, and you can't, because numbers really bore people the minute they come up. So we came up with a nice, easy to follow instruction chart. So basically the way that a marketeer would look at that funnel that we've just shown you, obviously there's more than one channel that you will use to try and get candidates. We know that it's not as simple as being one. On the right-hand side, channel 4, that's kind of working all the way through. You're getting good quality candidates, they're getting through the system, they're ending up with hires. That feels like a place that you want to invest more in. So when you come to spend your next round of budget, you might widen that channel and put more into that because it's working and it seems to be delivering, all the way through the process. Channel 3, it's getting you candidates to shortlist. They might be getting to interviews, but not enough of them are getting through. It's usually not quite black and white. It's not like none of them make it, but it's not really cutting the mustard beyond that. I'd say you probably stick with that. It's getting you quality through to the interview. It may be that there's some work you can do around the messaging at interview or what have you, but you are getting a degree of quality through the process, whereas channels 1 and 2 aren't really getting anyone. They're delivering you lots and lots of applications or clicks or applications at the top, but those applications aren't then going anywhere. This can quite often be some free channels, and I think there is an increasing realization that free in terms of money might not mean free in terms of the time and resource that it's going to take to necessarily work through lots and lots of applications if those applications are never actually making it further through your pipeline. What this might point towards is starting to adapt your approach at the very top. If you're starting to pay for outcomes, you might need to think about what sort of starting point delivers what kinds of outcomes. So we did a bit of research a couple of months ago that found that 60% of industries use more masculine language in their job adverts than the other way around. So if you're finding that ultimately you're not getting, let's say, females in tech is quite a kind of common bugbear of people, they can't find people to ultimately get through the system, it may be that right at the very stop you're blocking or precluding people from getting engaged with your business in the first place because the language that you're using in your job ad is not attractive, so they're not even applying, let alone finding their way through the system. So prioritising candidate experience, we've mentioned candidate experience a number of times. I think when you're taking a candidate positively through the experience with you, it's relatively easy to provide them with a decent candidate experience. I think people get that now in terms of landing pages and scenarios and tests and meet the team. They're succeeding, they're happy, they're getting through your process. Everyone's happy. It's quite easy to keep them feeling happy and show them your lovely campus, and you can get some free apples and coffee here. I think that's relatively easy to do. The difficulty is that we end up rejecting the vast majority of candidates, and I think it's much more difficult to try and give a positive candidate experience to a rejected candidate than it is to someone who's happily wending their way towards being your CEO in 20 years. So I think it's about trying to work out what is a proportionate level of kind of feedback and interaction to try and give a candidate, so at the very least they can walk away from the experience saying that it was meaningful and I felt like I was treated as a human being. I don't think people are going to get massively upset that they don't all get your job. They know that that's not the game, but I think you can help them to have a decent experience, and who knows, that might mean they come back and engage with you again later down the line. So if we think about the ways in which you're trying to sort of test people, or the reasons why you might take people out of your process, as you get further through the funnel, you're getting to know them better. So people who don't get past application, it's probably a relatively simple query that has meant that they've taken themselves out of the process. When you get to the long list, so kind of getting the CVs together, it's kind of basic skills. Do they have on their CV the things that you basically need? Once you get to shortlist, so you're interviewing people, you're probably asking them about the role-specific skills that they're going to bring to it. You're going to test a little bit for when have you done this, and describe to me a time when you did that, and start to understand a bit more about what they can do. By the time you're through to offer, you've probably brought them in, shown them round, done the culture fit piece, and ultimately, whether they come and join you or not, probably is defined by the salary you offer and whether the location ultimately works for them. But at each stage, you're getting to know them better. And I think you've just got to try and make sure that when you manage them out of the process, you give them a kind of an equal and opposite amount of attention that they kind of have to have got that far through your process. So for example, to take assessment days in the middle, so with a shortlist, you get people in for an assessment day, 16 of them turn up, 6 of them make it through to the next stage. If you're using some sort of assessment software or some sort of technique, I would just say make sure that you give them some sort of response from that so that they can at least assess for themselves where they maybe did or didn't quite hit the mark, and they can go away understanding themselves as a candidate better and being able to apply for the next job, whether that's with you or someone else, from a position of advanced understanding rather than being brought in, made to dance all morning and then told to go home. There's all sorts of solutions all the way through this funnel. Where you find that you might have your blockages, there are literally 1,000,001 different people out there with different solutions that might fit the bill. The thing I would say is if you're thinking about whether to automate or not, I would say it's relatively straightforward. If it's a simple, repetitive, standardised and impersonal task that you are looking to have completed, it probably could be done by a robot. If it's complex and varied and creative and personal, it probably needs a human being to do it. It's almost as sort of simple as deciding that. And I do think it's also about people in terms of your people at your within your teams. You know, they want to be getting up in the morning to be doing varied and complex jobs, things that need a human being. If you can get a machine to sift CVs or do the dull stuff that probably your team draw breath and think, I've got to spend 2 hours now doing something simple and repetitive, it's probably not the greatest thing for them either. Whereas the creative stuff that allows them to bring their human side to it is probably what gets them out of bed in the morning.